I'm Travis Brown, founder and CEO of Mojo Up Marketing and Media. And this is my podcast where I talk to the most successful Black and brown business executives who've broken through the barriers of today's business culture. Welcome to Mojo Up Live. I'm your host, Travis Brown, and we are back with another power-packed episode. If you've ever been in an audience when somebody speaks that is just crushing it, and the audience is silence, that is who I have today, none other than Angel Henry. She's always talking about her book, or the concept behind her book, called Dents in the Ceiling. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I got to start with this. So I'm sitting in an audience, and as a speaker, you judge other speakers, you just do. And I'm sitting in an audience one day listening to you talk about, DEI and talking about culture and talking about ceilings and issues. And there's a point where I felt so uncomfortable for all of the people in the room that had to just be like, she's talking right at me. And, as a speaker, you're doing that because you're putting people in situations that have to think and have to own some things. I'm interested to hear your thought, like, what is it about speaking on the stage for you that just makes it all worth it?
Oh my goodness, yes. So it's the energy. It's the energy that I get from folks. I've done, obviously, last couple of years we've done virtual, and there's a lot of effort to connect with folks. But when you're in the room with people and you see the heads nod, you see like the eyes, you're like, okay, I'm hitting a button here. You kind of pull on that. So it's really the energy from the people that I feed off of, and that says a lot because I'm an introvert. I know, right? I fake it well. Well, I do. But so I take that energy, right, and then I go back and I
ain't even believing you're an introvert. I can't even buy it.
I do.
I'm an introvert, but you, the way you just work rooms and things, and I tell people all the time, like, it's a learned skill.
It is.
Right?
It is, absolutely.
So let me jump to this. Talk about what are you talking? I mean, like, when you speak, like, what are you really trying to influence people based upon what you're talking about?
Absolutely. Really getting folks to think about the practicality of inclusion. To date, from my perspective, when the whole topic around leadership and training has been missed, we've missed the mark because we're talking about productivity and how do we motivate our people and our staff. You don't even know who they are. What are their birthdays? What are their kids' names? Like who are they? Before we can even talk about how are we going to motivate them and how we're going to get them to be productive. Are they struggling with the death of a loved one? Are they, struggling with relationship issues or who are they as a person before we can talk about work, before we can talk about productivity, and before we can talk about making it better? Let's treat the whole person as a human and not just, check yourself at the door and this whole bring your authentic self to work. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we got to be careful about who we're bringing to work. But when they bring whenever is coming through that door, how do we engage with them? How do we connect with them? And then we can talk about the other stuff. So huge missed opportunity from a leadership training and a leadership development standpoint. And that's really what I'm talking about is how do humans be humans with each other?
But we got to go there now because you kind of set that up about this authenticity. And I full disclosure, am in a spot where it's like I want people's authenticity, but I still kind of want it with some level of professionalism.
Exactly.
And I just we had a meeting with our team the other day going, like, yes, we get to show up, but there's a time and a place to understand as the young kids, my daughter, my 21-year-old daughter says, you got to read the room.
Exactly.
And know that. But then some people feel like, well, that's not necessarily my authentic self. I told him yesterday, I literally said this. I said, listen, just because you don't want to brush your teeth doesn't mean you shouldn't brush your teeth when you come to work because that there's a line there. So how does that actually work?
You want to be authentic. You want to have a paycheck. I mean, let's brass tack this. Let's get down to it. So when we're talking about folks bringing their authentic selves to work, we're really, folks. That's just dog whistle for emotional intelligence. both sides have to have it. So yes, the employer, the person who has positional power, we have to bring them up in terms of their emotional intelligence. But again, the person that's coming in through the door, right? If they have low emotional intelligence, then how are they going to receive feedback? How are they going to grow? How are you going to be able to put them in a position in a room with folks that they don't know and expect them to perform and knock it out of the park? So both sides absolutely need to come with this awareness of self.
Yeah.
And what the piece that we have found in angel speaking that's missing is they'll start off with awareness of how I am, my strength, right? And we all know DISC, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, the list goes on, right? Predictive index. There's a whole litany out there about what I'm good at and what my strengths and my skills are. And that's what I'm going to lead with, and that's what I'm going to bring. But we forgot to take that next step about, well, how do you sharpen that, right? To kind of round out the edges. Because if you are someone who's a driver and you have great ideas, but not necessarily great at executing, sorry, you're going to have to get good at executing as well. So how do we help bring that up? And then also, too, how do I deal with people who are not like me? How do I communicate with you? I'm a driver, but how do I communicate with you where you're maybe you're leading with personality, you're leading with relationships, and that's important and that's your value. How do we communicate with each other? So there's some missing pieces here that we started, but we really do have to flesh out more.
Do you think that with the younger generation that's coming up, right, is there a different set of rules or engagement, training, development that we have to consider with this group of people that have come into the world under different circumstances than some of us older people have?
Absolutely. So my aha moment for me is I was trained back when they were doing network training, which was the cringy, like, oh my gosh, business cards and passing out and all that, which absolutely did not want to do. But we were trained. We came up in-person networking. That's a model that we know. Well, we have to think about those that graduated from college in 2019 and 2020. All their networking has been virtual to date. So now that things are starting to open back up and we're encouraging them to come to not just virtual meetups, but actual in-person meetups, they have no idea what to do. They just have not been in that environment to know, like, oh, have my LinkedIn QR code queued up to connect with somebody, or, you know, how do I engage? How do I talk to them? What questions do I ask? How do I not be awkward? All the same questions that we had in the beginning, but they don't have a model for it. They haven't seen it before. So there's apps, and back to your point too about values. I believe that they have the same values that our generation did. I definitely want to work for a company that cared about the environment and supported the African American community and gave women leadership opportunities. I don't think that's any different. The difference, this generation is willing to speak up. And they speak up by just not joining the organization.
By dipping. when they dip, right?
We'll stay and fight, right, or fight as much as we can.
Sure.
And I remember telling myself of, hey, I'll push as far as I can, or I'll do what I can, right? I want to stay in the seat so that I can do as much as I can. And I was very strategic about how much I pushed, which wasn't that much, right? Yeah. If you have the position but no power, you can only do so much. And so we were willing to stay. They're not willing to stay.
Because I think the other aspect within that is that there's an era. And I'm 46 years old, so you know the era I grew up in was you were taught to grind.
Yes.
You were taught to work 10, 12 hours a day.
Absolutely.
Saturdays weren't necessarily going to be yours.
Right.
Evenings if you had to. Like
Absolutely.
It was a whatever you take mentality. Now enter now as a young black professional.
Yeah.
I never felt like I had. Like if this one doesn't work out, it's not like I got a whole bunch of other ones just lined up.
Exactly.
Even though I may have the skill set, right?
Exactly.
So it's like, how far do I push? And then I think historically it always was, well, how much of my authentic self can I actually bring?
Oh, absolutely.
At what point in time is it like, yeah, we like Travis, but T-Bone, T-Money, TJ,
Exactly.
all the other things like,
we'll have to leave him at home.
You don't have to leave him out.
Absolutely.
Right? And so the question is like, that was where we were, here's where we are now. And so like when you think about the work environment, I'm still going back to this question of authentic self. Mm-hmm. How much do we have to compartmentalize?
Yeah.
How much are we able to say, no, we can find organizations, because I feel like I'm on the front side of the environment that we're creating here in our culture, but there's still some limitations that we're still trying to understand.
Absolutely. In terms of how much of authenticity you want to bring is an individual decision, for sure. Mm-hmm. For example, I was specifically told that if I wanted to make an executive leadership position, and this is by another African American female, I needed to wear smaller earrings, put my hair back, keep it down, right? Because at the time my locks were a little shorter and I had like a bob thing going on. She's like, yeah, put that back. Must wear blazers at all times. At the time I was talking to her, I had on a cute little red sweater set that I absolutely loved. She's like, nix that, honey. Sweater sets are for white girls. Right. So in terms of my appearance and you best better believe my husband went and we went to, what is it? I can't even think of the name, over in Keystone at the Crossing Mall. And he bought me every blazer in every color. I went to JCPenney's and got the small little earrings. And I purposefully grew my hair out so I could put it in a ponytail or put it in a bun every day.
Wow.
So when you think about changing your appearance, now the next step, which is what you're asking, what are you changing about yourself internally? Mm-hmm. What are you stuffing? What's the mindset that you're in every meeting, mm-hmm. in every decision that you make, in every email that you send mm-hmm. out? And all of that is called emotional tax, right? That is the corporate trauma that we experience, particularly as African American women, that extra that we have to think about before we do anything. And it's a luxury, it's a privilege to just walk into a meeting and say, oh, I'm just gonna spitball this idea and just think off the top of my head. We don't have that privilege. We don't have that luxury. So all that extra takes a toll. And at some point, where I found in my career is, at some point you just no longer care anymore. You start to just like, I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to call it out, which is probably where you met me at, where it's like, I'm just going to tell it like it is. But that's few and far between. Most of us don't have that privilege and that luxury. So in terms of being authentic, you really do have to do some soul searching and think to yourself, what am I willing to give up for this check? And you are going to be giving up something.
I think it's powerful to hear you say that, disheartening to hear you say that we're in a state where we're still having that conversation of what am I willing to give up of myself, to be here. And we're not talking about really professionalism. Yeah. We're talking about who you are and the identity. From a leadership perspective, what's the message to leaders to not intentionally, or I think there is a place where it's unintentional,
absolutely. Yeah.
creating an environment or saying things that are like that? Because let me go back, and I'm going to set this up, because there was a point where I was running a large mortgage operation, had 30 plus salespeople, and if somebody came in and their appearance was jacked up,
right,
I knew that would prevent sales.
Yes.
So I didn't want to put the person across from the table that's going to jack up sales.
Yes.
Right. And at the time, what I have in my head was I was thought about tattoos.
Yeah.
Because at some point in time, it was like, if you're tatted up, like people will just judge that. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember telling somebody like you gotta get your hair, get a fade, like clean your stuff up, get your stuff lined up, like get your beard together, 'cause it looks crazy.
Yes.
In a professional white collar environment, and similar probably to the person that was saying it to you. I'm like, I'm just trying to help you succeed in the playing field that you're in.
Exactly.
How do leaders today try to help people succeed and understand the game that we are still playing, but not do a disservice to them as a human being? Yeah.
Complete honesty, right? So maybe a little bit of a disclaimer from the lady, but her intent was 1,000% spot on in terms of, hey, look, I have a seat at the table and this is what the table looks like. So if you want me to A, recommend you,
Yep.
or B, even have a thought about getting in that room, this is how you're going to have to present yourself, right? So I know that, but it was hard. It hurt a little bit, right?
But you know what tripped me out? You
Yeah.
said my husband went and bought you all the blazers.
Yeah, I had every color.
So that you could assimilate
Yes.
to be in the room.
And I wore them every day. Wore them every day faithfully. That was my new uniform. My old, which is a graduation, by the way, because my old uniform was khakis with the polo, right? The different color polos. That was my first uniform. No one told me to do that. But as I looked around,
Right.
I'm in tech, I'm in IT, right? I look around the room, every dude, no matter what the hierarchy, the higher up you go, you went from like a sweater to a blazer, right? Maybe a tie every now and then, but that was rare. But everybody, all my peer group and above, khakis and a polo shirt, right? So I did that. But yeah, in terms, I've been in your position where I'm a manager. I looked at an individual, extremely smart, extremely intelligent, skilled at his craft, but the packaging was basketball shoes and jeans and a t-shirt every other day. And I'm like, I can't be the one to tell him because I don't want to offend him, but how do I get through that? Your packaging might need to shift a bit if you, so the dog whistle code is dress for the position that you want. Dress for that next level
dog
up.
whistle code.
Yeah.
Hold on, you got to unpack that.
Okay.
I've not heard that for her phrase.
Oh, okay. So there are some phrases and some things, some corporate America speak. There's some language that we use in order to get across what we need to without actually saying it to skirt around any HR violations. Okay? So if I can't tell the person the way you're showing up, it needs to change and you're not going to get that promotion unless you do, the code is look at the people above you at the next level and see how they present themselves and what they wear. And you might want to consider dressing like that in order to get to that next level. Just the thought. And so that, if you have enough emotional intelligence and you're smart enough, oh, I need to look like that in order to get in the room, or as close to that as humanly possible. Code. So we're code switching, we're code talking to each other. It's like it's all a mirage and people are kind of sick of it at this point. So it's like, okay, how do we dispel some of that? I don't think we're going to get rid of it completely because the system was never set up for us. But if we are going to be successful at navigating and operating through it, then quite frankly, you'll need folks like myself that are willing to say, hey, been there, done, kind of like Moses on the mountaintop. I might not get into the land of milk and honey, but I can certainly give you the rules and tell you how to do it. So I'm that person, and folks like me that are saying, hey, if you want to continue to go at it in this corporate space, here's the lay of the land, here's the rules of the game.
So let's talk about dents in the ceiling and how that came about, and what are you doing with it now?
Yeah, how it came about. So that was a that was a faith walk. So again, I'm a tech girl. I've written some poetry, some short stories in the past. Never in a million years would I think about writing a book, and never in a million years would I consider putting myself and my stories in it. But what happened is I was a part of a leadership group in Atlanta. So I was flying between Indianapolis and Atlanta once or twice a month. And the director of the leadership group, I told her, I was like, look, I'm starting at a new company. I got baggage from the old company. I know I got baggage from that company. How do I do this? How do I start fresh? How do I start clean? How do I do like a little mental detox here? And she's like, well, have you thought about writing? Just like journal it out. And I laughed. I'm like, honey, I am a wife, a mother. Did I mention I have a full-time 9-to-5? I'm doing all these things. There's no way I have time to journal. And she's like, okay, just think about it. Just like, it was just a seed that was planted. Just think about it. And a couple of months later, sure enough, I had a issue with a vice president where it felt like he was bullying me into a decision that I was not ready to make. And I was triggered, and I came home and I had all this emotion. I was angry, I was upset. I was thinking, how dare he talk to me that way? How dare he try to, push me into doing this? He was bullying me, and I'm upset. And that night I like, okay, I'm gonna write the situation out. I couldn't stop. I thought all the way back to when I was an intern. I thought about things of sexual harassment, more bullying, just being ignored, being passed over, and then finding out later exactly why I was passed over, right? And it had nothing to do with performance. It was simply that such and such my neighbor was friends with somebody else, and that's how they got the position over me. I'm like, oh, okay, nice to know. So all of those little scenarios and snippets I just wrote out, and I sat there and thought that night, and it's like literally like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm in my basement, and I thought, I am not the only one. There's no way I'm the only one that has experienced stuff like this. And fast forward, a friend of a friend, true God opening up doors. Long story short, I ended up having women call me, say, hey, I hear you want to hear about me being a Black woman in tech. I'll tell you my story.
Oh, wow.
And so I talked to over 30 women from coast to coast, big consulting companies, small mom and pop shops, literally from Washington State to Florida and every point in between, big cities, small cities, and sharing of their story. And the most impactful to me, and I will never forget it, I was blown away. The lady called me up and she was like, hey, a friend recommended me to talk to you. She said that you're taking, people's stories in tech. She was like, but honestly, I really don't have a negative one. I really don't have anything bad to say. I've had a pretty good run. I've had a pretty good course in my career. I'm good. And I was like, oh, sure. No, well, phenomenal. No problem. You're a blip. Great. If you can think of any other women, let me know. And before we got off the call, she said, oh, wait a second, there is one story I have. It was the most egregious, blatant, discriminatory story I had ever heard. And I'm thinking, how did you not lead with that? Like, how did we're about to get off the phone and you not like, how is this not top of mind for you? And she said, honestly, I forgot about it. How did you forget about something what? How did you forget about something so pivotal in your career? And she was like, oh, I just kept going. And that is when I thought about, I need to break the silence. I'm not just telling these stories. I'm literally doing the work of the Maya Angelou's, the Toni Morrisons, the bell hooks of, we're breaking our silence and we're resisting by telling our stories. And that was the quote that was at the African American Museum, bell hooks. People resist by telling their stories. And that seed was planted in me in 2019, and it came to fruition about a year later.
I'm hearing you say this, and I have these experiences where my wife and I have had conversations about what is racism and oppression, and what do these things even look like in my life, right?
Yeah.
And I remember there's a point in time and I'm like, it's not even existent. I remember saying that, right? And then kind of like that lady, like this one, and then this one, and then this one, and this one, this happened. Oh yeah, when they did, and I just started to have all of these things that over the course of my life that they're so regular.
Yeah.
It's just like when my wife is white, and so when we go places sometimes she'll be like, "Did you see what just happened?" And
I'm like, "Nope.
Nope.
Didn't see it.
Don't even see it."
Yeah.
Because you got to a point where you're like, it happens so often and so regular that you just learn to live within it.
Right.
as if there's not much you're going to do with it or around it, and so you're conditioned that's just part of the grounds, right? That's part of the territory. That's part of the battlefield.
Yep.
And you don't even really see it.
Yeah.
And I think that was a space that I had found myself in, when it came to just racism in general, microaggressions, the things that people, would say. And I'll tell you one, I had some friends growing up, great people, super influential in my life. And one of the guys, used to say, yeah, but they're not black people like you.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And even probably used a different word.
Yeah.
And you just think about all those collective things, right?
Yeah.
And you don't even know, is it even worth telling the story?
Right.
And so I just want to stop for a second and say, thank you. Like thank you for doing the work to tell powerful stories. Because there's so many of them out there that never get told.
Right.
And we navigate through our life like they're not even worth being told anymore.
Yeah.
So thank you for tapping into it, to listen to your spiritual senses. And it sounds like the context of yours are women. Mm-hmm. Wearing a shirt that says Black Women Matter.
Yes. And it was tough because I have a Black Tech Matter shirt that a dear friend of mine, Linda Calvin, gave me. So I'm like, I'm holding it up before I'm like, which one do I wear? Which one do I wear? Which one do I wear? But this one went with the boots. So.
There you go. So let me ask you this. You're out there as a speaker, consultant, doing work. Like, what is the work now that you're actually trying to accomplish?
Yeah. So you'll love this because you come from the marketing background. So my business coach, I went to her asking her to help me market the book. And she was like, okay, we'll create a strategy for that. She said, but what do you want to do with it? And I'm like, I'm crickets. I had not thought about it. What are you talking about? I'm going to give them the book. They're going to read the book. She's like, yeah, and they're going to read the book and change will happen. She's like, yeah, sweetie, that's not how this works. And I'm like, what do you mean? And sure enough, fast forward about a few months later, a mentee of mine got on the call and she was beating herself up because she was like, I can't believe it, missed opportunity. They offered me a promotion and I didn't even negotiate. Angel, it's right there. I have the note. It was in the book. I had notes about it. I knew what to say. I was all prepared and it just blew out of my mind. And I'm like, oh, we didn't practice. She was like, yeah, I guess I just really need more. And that was my aha moment to say, oh, people are going to need more than just to read the book. So read the book is step one. That's awareness. Mm-hmm. Now we need to practice this whole thing that we call inclusion. We need to practice this whole thing about not just some of the concepts in the book, but okay, how do I apply it to me? How do I make it real and practical? I need somebody to talk to help with that. And if you're thinking higher level in terms of systems, like an HR person or a chief diversity, equity, inclusion officer, and you're thinking, okay, how do I really bake this? I picked up the book, I read it. Yes, we need to make change. Yeah, we need to diversify our hiring pool. Yeah, we need to change how we do promotions. Yeah, we need to change our decision criteria about how we retain our folks. All of that. Yeah, how do we really bake that into the culture? You're gonna need help because if you knew how to do it, you would have done it by now.
And one of the things that my coach taught me early on is he said, people will pay you to come talk about your book.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
They may not read it.
Yeah.
But they'll pay you to come and sit on a stage and tell you everything that's in there and they'll pay you a lot of money to come talk about what they could buy for $25, right?
Right.
It's one of the most fascinating things to think about, that business in that world. But you're also right, because he taught me something else, my coach did when I was speaking, was that your job is to make sure that more is available.
Yeah.
Because they're going to need it. And whether that's coaching, consulting,
exactly.
Boot camps, whether that's retreats, like all the things in that world, because everybody's always going to need more.
Exactly.
And your job is to make that available.
Exactly.
I have one final question here in a second, but it's time for the Mojo Up hot seat.
Oh.
So time is flying.
Okay.
So the Mojo Up hot seat is a series of quick questions.
Oh dear. Okay.
For you to answer real quick. So the first one is favorite place to vacation.
Oh, Singapore.
Coolest city you've ever been to.
Yeah. Well, actually, you know what? I'm gonna say I really did enjoy Maui.
I mean, I can't even attest that. Favorite restaurant.
Oh, Cooper's Hawk, without a doubt.
And what's the favorite kind of food?
Oh, their egg rolls to die for.
A brand that you love.
Ooh. Oh, that's a good one. You know what? I really enjoy the Honest brand. Being a mom and looking for products for both my kids have eczema. And so looking for, products that were good for kids' skin and didn't have all the extra in it. I really appreciate what they bring to the table for us.
Favorite sports team.
I have to say the Colts, don't I?
No, you don't have to say
I don't
anything
have
on
to
the
say
show.
the Colts. Okay,
You can say the Patriots on this show.
I'm gonna say the Steelers.
It's all right. I love Mike Tomlin. Favorite college.
Oh, University of Pittsburgh, Cathedral of Learning, of course.
TV show you're watching or you've binged.
Oh, what did I just get done binge watching? Oh my gosh, what was the name of that show? Netflix, like anything on Netflix, really.
Powerful movie that you just like, it just does it for you.
Oh, The Woman King. Rocked my world.
The Woman King.
Yeah.
I'll check that out.
I have to.
Favorite type of music.
Oh, reggae.
Do you have a hype song or a walk-up song?
Well, I'm laughing. I got to come up with a new one, and here's why. It was Diamonds Are Forever by Kanye West. I got to come up with a new song. Kanye messed it up.
He did. He tore it all up for you. Nonprofit that you love or support.
I'm a board member for Family Promise and Child Advocates, Inc., for sure. Both of those two, without a doubt.
So my last question for you is, we always say that at the end of when it's all done for you, there's going to be a number you started, a number that you ended, and there's a dash. When people talk about that dash, they talk about your life.
Yeah.
What do you want them to say about Angel?
She was an advocate. Advocated for others. Advocated for others that did not have a voice or a seat at the table, and she fought for us.
Angel Hendry, thanks so much for stopping by. We'll let you get this close out. You get to do the clapper. It's a wrap.
I've never done this before.
To finish it up.
Mojo Up, closing out.